don't ask a question to make it like a gimmick to try to like trick me into responding.
So you seem like a guy who lives you seem to live a little bit of on the unorthodox side when it comes to marketing.
Your friend was definitely over posting on Facebook too, weren't they?
That place too.
There's trade-off. There's pros and cons to each. There's trade-offs to each. Like, is there risk? 100%. I just wanted to join a startup, and they were like, it was basically like, I want to be on this team. And they were like, cool. The only, the job you can do is mop the floors. I love that like line of thinking. I think to the stuff that we talked about earlier is like, that's an advantage for you.
The Tony Moze Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Tony Moze Podcast, where today I interviewed from the marketing side an individual named Dave Gerhardt. Dave Gerhardt is the founder of DGMG, his marketing consulting firm, which provides marketing and education and consulting for high-growth B2B startups. There's also a now well over 4,500 plus member community. Everything from his email list, podcasts, courses, job board, and more is up on his site. Before DGMG, he was the former VP of Marketing, then turned Chief Brand Officer at Drift, a $1 billion valuation company, and Chief Marketing Officer at Privy, which exited for 9 figures. A guest lecturer at Harvard Business School, Dave has traveled the world speaking and coaching marketing teams and startup founders. He is the man with the phrase DGMG, because no one goes to school for B2B marketing. And in this episode, we talk a little bit about his journey into marketing, his book Founder Brand, Turn Your Story into Your Competitive Advantage, and how you, my listeners, can become successful when branding and marketing yourself, whether that's for hiring managers or for your own business. So without further ado, here is my talk with Dave Gerhardt.
All right. Hey, Dave, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. I have questions. I read the book. Founder Brand. Of course, I see your presence on social media. And of course, I got questions around marketing, questions around helping sales, and just everything else. I mean, I'm really curious. So, you started your career off in marketing, but made a quick pivot into account management. 2-part question. First, what was the inspiration that made you consider a career in marketing?
It was the only thing that I was good at. I was never good at like math or finance. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career. And the thing that I've always kind of, now that I look back and see patterns and stuff, you don't realize it till later, but I've always been like a decent communicator and writer. And I got a PR internship shortly after I had left college. And that internship, basically, I got good at my job at PR pretty quickly because I was just kind of using my skills as a writer, as a communicator. And that was fun. That was like, I didn't think I'd be into work, but like, it was cool to go to work and like do things that had an impact for others and like, want people to like have you on their team. And that part was like kind of addicting. And I turned that into like, maybe there's a career, maybe marketing is a thing for me. So I went from kind of PR to product marketing. And then I ended up at startups where I was able to kind of do all of the marketing, but I got the customer success job. I didn't even want to do customer success, but I wanted to go join a startup. And the founder was like, we don't have any marketing jobs for you. We need a customer success manager. We have 40 customers and nobody helps them out and works with them daily. So like you could do that. And I was like, cool, I'll do it. Maybe I'll use that as my foot in the door and like parlay that into a marketing role later. And other things happen, but that was, I kind of customer success was like a means to do it. I actually am I'm terrible at that job. so it's a good fit that I'm not there.
No. Okay. So, I noticed like specifically you look on LinkedIn and it says, you were in account management. Was this more the customer success role you're talking about?
Yeah. Like, I think I called it account management because it seemed more like official at like a startup, like account management. But what my job was, there was like 3 or 4 salespeople. My job was onboarding. Hey, Tony, thanks for, you bought the product. I'm going to get you onboarded, going to make sure you get everything set up. And like, I would be your direct contact day to day, week to week as you had questions. And so it was like half support, half like helping customers with strategy stuff, which
Gotcha.
it's mostly support
Okay.
for me. And at that time, this was an early stage startup. It's different. That role is different at every company. But for me, as like the first customer success / account management person, that was what I did. And I actually think it was even before. I think like the term customer success became more popular after that. That's more of like a now type of term anyway. So
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So, hearing back on this, like you went first from marketing and then you did that quick pivot, going into customer success, like I was thinking, like, what was that inspiration that said, hey, I want to go into customer success and then make you want to return back, to marketing?
well, I didn't even want to go into customer success. I just wanted to join a startup. And they were like, it was basically like, I want to be on this team. And they were like, cool. The only, the job you can do is mop the floors. And I was like, cool. I just wanted a seat on, I was working at a big company at the time called Constant Contact. And they had like 1,500 people and I was in my mid 20s. And I got really into startups. And I was like, man, I would love to go to a startup and feel like, I wanted to feel like I was just part of something bigger and I was building something, and, building something from nothing was always like attractive. And I wanted to be part of that. And so I got connected with this one founder who happens to be Ben from Privy, the company that I went to down the road later. And he was like, "Yeah, I don't have any marketing jobs." And I was like, "That's okay. What jobs do you have?" And I really connected with him. I connected with him as a person, as a founder. And so at that point, I was like, I think I want to work in marketing, but I'm not sure. And I'm willing to I kind of made that decision at that point in my career to prioritize more like the people that I wanted to be around and the team that I wanted to be on than like I'm not in I don't want to do I don't want to do this job forever, but I took it as like, I'm going to do it now and use it as a way to like build my relationship and credibility with people in this company and blah, 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 blah. That company ended up running out of money and failing. And so there was harder. The reason I went back into marketing was because at the time that I was working at Privy and I was doing this account management role, I'd actually started a podcast of my own outside of work called Tech in Boston, where I just was a guy that I just said, like, I wanted to get into startups. And I tweeted out one day, like, hey, this is in 2013. I tweeted out like, has anybody done a podcast about startups in Boston? And like a couple of people responded back to me and they were like, you should do it. And I was like, oh, okay. And Ben, who was my boss, was like totally supportive of it. It was the coolest thing ever. He was like, do it. I think it'd be great for you. I think it'd be great for the company in some subtle way. Go do it. And so I basically did 60 interviews in a year. The podcast had a bunch of downloads. I built an email list I started to build like an audience of people in the Boston startup community. And it was when Privy ran out of money that Mike Volpe, who was the CMO at HubSpot at the time, he was an investor in Privy. And he said, hey, HubSpot really wants to start a podcast. I know this company that's basically going out of business. There's this person who works there, Dave, who has a podcast. We could offer him a job and he could come work at HubSpot. And so the way that I actually got into marketing was I got hired at HubSpot to launch their podcast and run their podcast. And I ended up leaving HubSpot to go to Drift. And that's where I got my first like real, I'm kind of doing everything marketing job.
Oh, that's awesome. So it sounded like you used something as a gateway to get to where you wanted to be next.
Yeah. And I think like, I was actually like, I think this is one of the most important decisions that I made in my career. And it was important because it didn't require like the company that I was working at. Like it was like, you can have whatever on your resume, but I think what's cool today about like, especially if you're in sales and marketing and in tech, like I know your audience of people like are trying to find, are working in that world. What I think is so unique about today, especially like with digital and online, is you can kind of build up your own resume in a field, regardless of how much experience you have. And so like, I built my own kind of media company. I built a podcast. I built an email list. I learned how to do so many things from doing that on my own. Like you probably learned so much from doing the show that what HubSpot hired me for was not because I had marketing experience on my resume, because like this guy clearly knows something about audience building and podcasting. And so like, we want to hire that. One of the best people that I've ever seen hired is actually somebody that got hired when I was working at HubSpot. And I remember they were interviewing him, and in the interview process, they sent me his like, this guy had a website and a blog that was all about SEO. And I was like, man, this dude is like an SEO expert. This is amazing. But he was like 23 years old, but that didn't matter. Or if he was 40 years old, but had no experience in that field, like you can create your own your own thing. And so it could be like, you're really into gardening and you create a TikTok channel that's all about gardening tips, and that channel blows up. I might want to hire that person as a marketing on my marketing team to manage social media, even though they might not know anything about my company. They've clearly figured out like how to build an audience and how to do social media. And so I think like what I subconsciously learned was like how to build an audience, how to do marketing in this community building way. And I think that really like helped with my credibility beyond my like underwhelming experience that had been on my resume at the time. It was this thing that I built outside of work.
So that's cool. So somebody who's who's considering getting into, going from a non-tech place into a tech place, how they can position themselves is by, of course, creating a brand I'm thinking of like if someone can't tie the pieces together, like how do we say this? How do we show this to them like visually, or how do we illustrate that?
If it like, honestly, I would start like a blog or a newsletter or a podcast that's literally called like non-technical, my journey to become like, and the thing that I'm going to do is basically share my story as I'm trying to find these jobs and stuff right now. Right. Like, I've gotten really into golf but I want to get much better at it. Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking like, what if I started like a podcast about how I'm improving my golf game as a way to like selfishly help me, but also I could start to build like a media, I could build a following in that niche. And so I think if you don't have the exact experience, you can share what you're doing. And like, I mean, look at the world that we live in today with Instagram, with YouTube, with TikTok. You don't have to be an expert in a field to be interesting and to build an audience. And so like, I think what's interesting is like your story and what you're doing. And so I would share that story publicly and use that as a way to like stand out in a pile of hundreds of resumes. Because the hardest part about today is that even if you are a great fit from a candidate perspective, like you just might never stand out because there's 300 resumes that somebody's dealing with. And so I think like, but now all of a sudden I'm talking to this guy, Tony, and like, yeah, he's had a bunch of jobs, whatever, but like Tony actually like has a Facebook group with 500 members in it that are focused on transitioning from tech into tech careers. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Let me talk to that person, right? That's right. That's what I would start. But also, the more you can have one or two specific like angles. And so like for me, it's been like, I've kind of only talked about marketing on social media. And despite the fact that I am interested and do lots of other things, because what works well to build an audience is to kind of focus on a niche, right? Like, I think you were telling me more about your show before this. Perfect example of like owning a niche. You don't need this show to be hundreds of thousands of downloads for it to be successful. The people that are going to follow me on social media are people that are like interested in marketing, specifically at startups specifically. And I used to tweet about things I was eating, workouts I was doing, whatever, all this random stuff. And that never actually worked. It was when I just kind of focused all my efforts on like to become known for marketing, then that's when you actually like start to build an audience, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. And I actually wanted to ask a question about that. I'm going to ask that in a little while, but you normally do more B2B marketing, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, would you say between B2B and B2C marketing, would you say there's a difference between them, a vast difference? Why or why not?
I would say there's a difference. You got to understand, the difference is that like, and not to dumb down like a consumer example, but like the difference is like, if I'm just scrolling on Instagram and making a decision to buy a $20 phone case, that the approach to like win that customer is different than like if this is Tony at work and Tony, he's trying to justify like to his boss why they should spend $100,000 on some big company system that's going to impact 20 people across the company and take 3 months to implement. It requires a much different approach to marketing because of that, but it's also very similar because at the end, in both cases, you're still selling to people. Tony, who wants to buy the phone case, is a person the same way Tony, who works in HR and is trying to figure out like a new HR software program to implement in his company. They're both the same people, but the steps along the way might be different.
Awesome. So like I remember before I got into marketing, like I used to watch friends on social media post away like sometimes 10 to 20 times a day. And like this would be not Twitter, this would be like other places. And people will call that person an over poster. Like, do you think that still exists today? And when and where should you put the brakes on posting, and when and where should you keep going?
Over poster. Your friend was definitely over posting on Facebook too, weren't they?
That place too.
So like, I think, yeah, you can definitely be an over poster, but you know, each social media platform has like an algorithm now, right? And is running on machines and computers who are sucking in all this data and like figuring out what to show you. And so it's not even so much you can be an over poster, but like I've noticed, and this is just one specific channel example, like LinkedIn, which is an important platform for me. The max is kind of 2 posts a day. Like if I post 1 time a day, that's usually when I see the most reach on that post. But if I posted like 3 times in a day, by the time I've posted the 3rd one, there might be like 2 comments on that post. Whereas like when the days I just post 1, there can be 500 comments on a post. And so it's less about like like he posts a lot versus more. Like I think you have to understand how each of these platforms work. And but I think on Twitter is one example where I don't think you can overpost on Twitter, because Twitter by nature is like very ephemeral. It's like it's happening really fast. People don't often like go to your profile and actually see all those things. So I don't think you can overpost on Twitter. You can definitely overpost on Facebook, as we know from your friend. On LinkedIn, you can definitely overpost, but it's not because like, oh, Dave posts too much. It's more because like, if you post more than once, your post probably isn't going to even show up. So don't waste that good content and save it, right?
That's awesome. And just a side note, like I have been testing, although I've only been posting once a week, but I like to post. It seems what's getting reception on LinkedIn is my book post. So if I post a book that I'm reading and then talk about how it's impacted me personally, like that's gotten some good impressions. I mean, like it got like, one got, I forgot how many thousands, like over 5,000 views, and I forgot over 100 or 200 likes. And I'm like, or reactions to it. I was like, okay, I'm going to continue doing this, but I feel also it's helping to position me as a person who's going into this new profession, who shows that he's coachable, who shows that he wants to take the initiative to learn new things. The qualities that they say that they need in a SE, a solutions engineer.
Yeah, I love that like line of thinking. I think to the stuff that we talked about earlier is like, that's an advantage for you. And there might be other people who are maybe just as smart as you, but they're not doing that. And so you're, or like most people, and I've talked about this in the book, like I get some comments sometimes like, that's so obvious, dude. And I'm like, it is, but I'm posting it and you're not. And that's not a dig. It's just like 9 out of 10 people will not share the book thing and talk about your personal experience. And so the opportunity is like, if you can be that person who's like, yeah, I'm willing to write about this, it can help. But I also think like one of the really underrated benefits about social media is it's a powerful way for you to find your voice. Like my guess is like, you've probably like even just what you said, like you've already learned what content might get a better reaction when you talk about X. And so now when you go to post next week, you kind of already know like the ballpark of the things that you're going to talk about. But like you're also going to, if you do this for 6 months, are you going to be a better writer 6 months from now because you've been posting once a week about books on LinkedIn than you are today? 100%, because you've now posted, 50 times as opposed to only doing it once. And so I think it's great to build a following and great to like build up your brand and build an audience, but ultimately it's a really unique way to like find your voice and become a tighter copywriter and conveyor of a message.
What you said just before, it kind of reminds me of the Bruce Lee quote, and I'm going to only paraphrase because I don't know it word by word, but it's like, I don't fear the man who does 1,000 kicks in one day. I fear the man who does one kick for 1,000 days, or each day for 1,000 days. I actually, yeah,
I've heard that. And I've like read something similar about working out, like who's going to get in better shape, right? Like the person who, like, you're in the Army, but do you know the CrossFit workout Murph?
I know CrossFit.
Okay. You know CrossFit. So there's workout Murph that's like a mile run, 300 squats, 200 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, and 100 pull-ups, right? And then you run a mile. if you did that you can't do that every day, right? And so like that's a beast of a workout. But like if you do that on Monday, you're going to be sore until Friday, and so you might work out again on Saturday. And so yes, you just went all out, but now you've only worked out really for 2 hours in that week. First, like if you just did, if you broke that down, you did 20 minutes every single day. Now to the Bruce Lee quote, by the time you get to Sunday, you've already gotten 7 days of reps in, and you might be you might be more effective that way. And so I think I love the idea of like committing to posting consistently for that reason, and like putting something out there every day, because it's like an exercise. It forces you to have to think like, I got to come up with something that my audience might find interesting today, and I'm going to get better over time, because over a year I'm going to have posted almost every single day or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So like speaking about the discomfort and breaking through that, I'm thinking like much about, your chapter 5 in your book, Founder Brand. You wrote about people being uncomfortable with social media. So like from psychology and into the tech industry, I've noticed a lot of people, this has been a trend, at least around me, people are afraid of promoting themselves to prospective employers for fear they might be seen in a negative light. So say someone is trying to break into said industry, like how does an entry level person up to a standard level role teeter the line that gives themselves an edge while also maintaining professionalism?
I mean, I think this is why, like, I think LinkedIn is great for like whether people listening want to work in a B2C role or a B2B role or whatever, because you can still have, like, for me, I probably post many things that are not professional, but those are on my personal Instagram, which not everybody has access to, versus like I use my LinkedIn and another Instagram account and other social media channels to like, that is my kind of public facing persona. And so like, yeah, posting dumb or insensitive or angry or, controversial things about personal life things on social media could potentially have an impact on employment. But I think like you have to set out first and say like, well, what am I using this channel for? Oh, I think this would be a valuable way to like help build my brand beyond my resume and land my dream job. Then like, is that worth not posting your thoughts about what's happening in the Patriots game on Twitter? But I also like, I don't know, I kind of give myself conflicting advice on that, because I also think who you are, the authentic version of yourself, is also very important to show today. And I think, I think there's a way to be authentic and also, represent who you want to be professionally, right?
Yeah. 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 So I'm
but
thinking,
also like there's trade-off. There's pros and cons to each. There's trade-offs to each. Like, sure, is there risk? 100%, right? But the pros are like you might stand out and you might be able to connect with people. And 9 out of 10 other potential candidates are probably not doing this right now.
Yeah. So what should the one word answer be? Do it or what's the response? Do it or don't?
Do it.
Okay. Yeah. I want people to know that too. I want to hear it from Dave, because, people like, I don't know about this. And it's like, well, yeah.
Well, like, okay, then don't complain. Then don't complain to me about not being able to like make progress in the like, because I found that it's usually like, and for me, it's specific, like, this is more specific to like founders that I work with, like, but as a CEO in this example, CEO will be like, I want to get more opportunities to come inbound. I want to build our brand. I want to be more visible. And I'm like, great. What's a great way to do that? LinkedIn. And the CEO's like, no. I'm like, oh, so what do you, is there like some magic pill that you're going to take that this is magic going to happen? Like, it's at some point you have to make a decision like, yeah, this might be uncomfortable and this might not be what I'm natural at. But I also think when we talk about social media, like, as you know, Tony, like, it doesn't always mean you have to, like, if you don't love being on camera and you don't love being the star of the show, and like, you don't have, the reason why I love LinkedIn and I love Twitter is because you can be very successful with just text.
Yeah.
So like, are you the same person that's sharing like funny, witty, interesting thoughts via text or email to friends and stuff? Like, can you channel that into, you don't have to like be an amazing video editor on TikTok to build an audience. Like, that's why I love Twitter and LinkedIn from like a business and professional like career perspective, is because you just need your word. You just need typing on your phone. And I think that's pretty powerful.
Nice. Yeah. And so like, you're working with founders, of course. So you're doing consulting, right? So of course, part of the consulting is help teach, educate, give them, right, that kind of awareness so they know how to move next. So like, I'm thinking of like you doing this teaching. You're a guest lecturer at Harvard Business School, and also you seem like a guy who lives you seem to live a little bit of on the unorthodox side when it comes to marketing, just because I've seen a lot of this. I've seen another side of marketing. It's a little more stuffy. And I think you keep it a little more loose and relaxed, and that makes you so much more human. So like, what has your experience been lecturing at Harvard Business School, and how much do they give you the freedom to be Dave Gerhardt, DGMG? And how much of that do they want you to be, Harvard like?
Well, I mean, part of it is like, so I don't like work there full time. And so like, it'd probably be different if I worked there full time. But for me, I used to try to be professional Dave. And it wasn't until I was at Drift and I worked for David Cancel and he got to know me and he was like, you should be, he really empowered me to be me, which is like really powerful. And so like, it's hard to do that. You need a boss, a mentor, somebody like that who's going to empower you to do that. And I remember one specific time he was like, we were taking headshots for this new like investor deck that we were doing. And I no joke, I ran across the street to H&M and I bought like a blazer for like $20. And I put it on because that's what the CFO was wearing. That's what the VP of sales was wearing. And he saw the picture come out and he's like, what are you wearing? He's like, just take a picture. And that was really powerful for me. Like, cause I was like, okay, he's like, wear your hoodie, wear your black t-shirt or whatever. Like, this is you. And so that was really powerful. And I was like, okay, this feels nice. But I've also found that I think it's one of the most important qualities in business and career today. But I do it just because I don't know how to be. I either have to be like in character or myself, and it's too hard to like remember. Like, okay, right now I'm on with Tony, and then I'm going to go talk and act and be completely different after we hang up on this call. It's just too hard to have that like on and off switch. And so I think it's way better to be like to do nonfiction than it is fiction. And that's like a quote from Patagonia. There's a great book called Let My People Go Surfing from Patagonia's founder, Yvon Chouinard. And he just talks about like, as they were building Patagonia, and if you've ever seen Patagonia stuff, they don't have cartoons or gimmicks. It's all real people, real pictures, nature, outside, either their employees or people that bought their stuff. And in the book, he's like, we never created a fictional character because it's too hard to do that. You have to think about like, okay, when I'm communicating right now, am I work Dave or am I just Dave that like my friends know? And so it's way easier to be authentic and real. And I also think that it's more possible to do that today than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And it's way easier to be that. I did a workout before this and this is what I was wearing. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to put on a suit to do this. This is what I would do the same thing if I had a board meeting or whatever. It's just much easier to operate that way. And I know that like, that's not easy for everybody to do. And like, I like, it's not easy for everybody to just be able to do whatever they want and wear whatever they want and just like show up. And so that part is not lost on me. But I think your question is the right one, which is like, is it better to be the real you? 100%. Yes.
So I wanted to switch over to the marketing and BDR side. I want my BDRs, SDRs, sales development, business development reps to hear some of these things. But you had a chat with Josh Allen, CRO of Owl Labs, and Dave Rigotti, co-founder and CEO of Inflection.io. And they were talking about marketing and business development or sales development reps. You also believe that SDRs and BDRs fall into a no man's land between sales and marketing. Why should BDRs, SDRs report to marketing versus sales? And what could they do for marketing and what can marketing do for them?
Yeah, I don't think I actually don't think it matters. I think, well, so it matters a lot, but I don't think that there's a right or wrong way. I think that it kind of depends a lot on like what's the revenue function of the business. And so a lot of times I think marketing should own BDRs and SDRs, if they're responsible for like, if the metric that they're held accountable for is like meetings, right? So like if I'm the marketing leader and the thing that I'm supposed to do is I'm measured by how many sales meetings we're driving, then like I would want to manage and BDRs and SDRs are usually the ones that are setting those meetings and doing those activities to help get those meetings. Then I would love to have that in my organization, because I feel like then I could then I have all the ingredients to make the recipe, right? However, if I have no experience managing the SDRs and BDRs, and I've never really done that before, but maybe there's a counterpart on the sales side who has, I think that's always going to be a better fit. And there is some belief, which you can agree or disagree with on that, like it can be a better perceived career path for SDRs and BDRs to report up into sales. It's just some weird thing when you think about jumping teams, but I think at the right company, it doesn't matter from a career perspective, and the career path should still be the same. My one line answer is, it has to come back to the goals and the metrics that you have set for the business. It's got to match. When everything goes haywire, it's not because the SDRs are managed by marketing or not. It's because the whole company and the sales and marketing organization are not aligned on goals and strategy. That's where that and how those SDRs and BDRs actually fit into those goals and strategy. That's when it goes haywire. Then it's like, wait, why is marketing on the BDRs but sales is doing this? Like when everybody's on the same page with like, here's our goals, here's our strategy, here's how we see BDRs and SDRs as to hitting our goals, then it will, that's usually where like most of it comes from.
In order here, what are your top social media platforms if you were to break it down for personal or professional use, and why?
I would say professionally, I would say LinkedIn and Twitter would probably be 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. And then unless you were like some type of creative or content creator, I would put like Instagram and TikTok probably well below that. But also I think industry and what you're trying to do is really important. And so like if you are a video editor or designer, you're going to want to be doing more visually creative stuff on those channels, which kind of like lend that. So I think about the medium first, but I really like LinkedIn especially LinkedIn from a career standpoint.
Okay. And then how can a business development rep get more directors to C-level execs to open up their emails and commit to that call to action, i.e. book a meeting with them?
I would say like, don't try to like send this magic, like one bullet, one shot email. And I think people try to like, very rarely have I taken a meeting because of like one email that had all the information. So I think it's like, okay, I'm reaching out to an executive. I got to pack all this information in this email. I think that the goal should be to start a conversation. And so first, how can you start a conversation with that person? And the way that you might start a conversation with that person is by teaching them about some missed opportunity. Every executive is very pressured to like continue to grow and to do better and to do more with less. And so like, could you call out something that's missing? Could you, your company is an expert in whatever, right? Hey, Dave, I saw that your website is actually like 10% slower than it should be. It is? Shoot. Okay. I got to look into that. Right. And that's actually the first email. Like if you sell some type of website performance thing, right? Or like you sell consulting, like sales coaching services, right? I might send an email to that exec and say, hey, Tony, just curious, is there a reason that you're not doing any coaching for your sales team right now? And you might not know the answer to that, but you might get a response and they might ignore it, but they might say, actually, no, but I've been thinking about it. And so I think try to start a conversation and lead with some pain point, some value, don't ask a question to make it like a gimmick to try to like trick me into responding, but how can you be a representative of your ideally your company is an expert in something and you're the messenger for that company. You're trying to help solve that problem. Like, can you lead with a question and help solve the problem?
Awesome. And then lastly, what inspired you to write the book Founder Brand?
It was a playbook that like I felt personally and I saw happen at Drift and I saw happen at Privy, these two companies that I worked at. And I wanted to like go through the challenge of like trying to, I love books. I love, you and I talked about learning and like, I love learning and I love books and I wanted to create one of my own. And I just felt like in a world where everything's gone digital, I wanted to have something that people were like, dog earing and like putting, post-it notes on and stuff. And so I wanted to try to package, like you mentioned, I have a unique way of doing marketing. And so I tried to like isolate, how would I articulate that? And I was like, well, here's kind of one approach. And I want to see if I can like write a book about it and help teach people about that. And so ultimately it comes from a place of like wanting to teach people this framework and hopefully help more people actually use social media to benefit themselves, to benefit themselves and their businesses versus continuing to write it off as some channel that they don't understand.
Awesome. Dave Gerhardt, DGMG Marketing, thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope everybody loves this and talk to you guys soon.